Welcome to Connected, episode 178. The show this week is sponsored by Squarespace, Anchor, and Smile. My name is Stephen Hackett, and I'm joined this week by my friend and yours, Federico Viticci.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
I'm good. We are mic-less, although you wouldn't know that until now because apparently introing the show is my job. I don't know how that felt to me. But it's just us. Mike is off celebrating his birthday, so if you haven't tweeted at Mike, maybe wish him a happy birthday and tell him your favorite color in the same tweet. I think he'd really like to know your favorite color. Yes.
Mike is turning 41, so make sure to wish him a happy 41st, 41 birthday.
He's catching up with me almost.
Yeah, he really cares about. I mean, you're 46, Steven, so still a few years behind. But make sure to wish Mike a really happy birthday, very special number. Steven, do we have any follow-up this week?
We do. I would like to thank all the listeners who emailed me photos of puppies and flowers. Somebody sent me a picture of a baby. I don't know if it was their baby
or someone else's baby.
Well, that's the question. If it's someone else's baby, I have a lot of concerns. But if it's their baby, then it was a cute baby. So thumbs up. It was nice to have nice emails about nice things. We also got some emails about the Files app on iOS. And several people suggested File Browser, which is an app I believe we talked about during the Transmit conversation a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
But it does a whole bunch of stuff. You recently wrote it up on Mac Stories, so there'll be a link to that as well. So I've downloaded it and was playing with it today, and it does a lot of clever stuff. So it's if you're looking for something that the Files app can't do or struggles with because it's buggy, this app is worth a look.
Yeah, it's really powerful, and the developers are actually working on a bunch of improvements based on the story that I wrote. Really great guys. They listen to feedback. They try to implement, as long as the iOS APIs allow it. I think File Browser, if you're looking for iOS 11 integration in terms of stuff like drag and drop, for example, or really the file provider, so being able to browse your servers and connections within the Files app, that's the one you gotta try and maybe consider as an alternative to Transmit. The problem is that, especially if you compare the two side by side, the elegance and the polish of Transmit is really nowhere to be found in File Browser, which has a utilitarian look, I would say. Sometimes it kind of looks like a Windows app in places. But it's improving. I can tell you it's improving. They're trying to pay attention to these details. There's a beta that I'm testing that has a bunch of also visual improvements. So the drag and drop stuff and the files integration is really nice. And it depends on what your priorities are. If you don't care and Transmit is still working fine, that's okay. But if you're looking for iOS 11 features, this is the one that I would recommend.
Cool. So there'll be a link to that in the show notes. They have a regular version and then a business version that's more... Do you know the difference between those two?
Yes. So the business version has two main features. The first one is you can sync specific folders for offline usage. So nice. If you work in a business environment, you need to make sure that this directory from your server is always available on your device. You can do that. And also, if you happen to have, and I do, one of those SanDisk iExpand drive, the little USB stick that you plug into the lightning port of your iPad, you can access that with File Browser. And I can tell you that from this very feature, the SanDisk iExpand integration is going to be a lot better in the next version of the app. So this is a great way to almost turn the iPad into a computer from the perspective of I want to plug a USB drive into my device and copy stuff into it or back up my photos to a USB drive. This is possible with File Browser, and it's getting a lot better. So that's the difference.
So HomePod orders have gone up. What did we do?
I got one through our friend John Voorhees. He was kind enough to put in an order for me in the United States because, of course, in Italy we don't have availability or even confirmation that it will be available, like in France and Germany in the spring, we don't have any news from Apple. So not at the last minute, but I would say the day before or a couple of days before, I was looking at the photos, at the marketing photos from Apple on the website, and it seemed to me like they changed the color of the space gray one, that it's actual black instead of a really dark gray, and I thought it looked much, much better than the original product shots. So I changed my mind and I got the space gray HomePod.
Okay.
Yeah.
I went with white just because that felt like the traditional color. You know, like it's the iPod color. I like both. You know, I think both. I think either one would look good, but I went with white. And I think the white may be more fun. I got some ideas for photography and stuff for a review. So I went with the classic iPod white.
Yeah, I think that's gonna stand out more in videos and in photos. I think it makes more sense from a visual perspective. But I consider like most of the furniture in our living room tends toward black or really dark brown, and the white HomePod would have maybe it would stick out a lot, I guess. We have also the server, which is black, and the Echo, which is also black in the same area of the cabinet that we have. So the HomePod, the space gray one, would blend in a little better, I think.
Mm-hmm. Camouflage it. Where's the sound coming from? I can't tell. It's coming from everywhere. Federico.
Well, the next item in our follow-up makes me really, really upset. For a couple of reasons. Tell me about this story from TechCrunch.
BlaBlaCar is a company that we have followed on this show. I would say obsessively. It's a service that you personally use and endorse.
No,
on the deepest level.
I do not. I really do. So this is a service that. For those who are not aware of BlaBlaCar, it's a car sharing.
I don't know how you couldn't be.
It's a car sharing service where it's apparently really popular in Europe and in Italy and among my friends. And if you need to go somewhere, but you don't want to drive, or you don't have a car, or you don't want to take the train because for example, if you want to go to a small town in Italy, the transit system can be a bit problematic. What you do is you hop into someone else's car and you share the drive, and you pay that person money through the BlaBlaCar application. Mm-hmm. So if I'm a driver, if I'm going somewhere, I can advertise my trip on BlaBlaCar and say, hey, I'm going to Florence, and I can have 2 people in my car, and I can put in a bunch of preferences like I don't listen to music, or I don't want people who smoke, or I want people to be quiet. So there's a bunch of parameters that you can set. And you, as the passenger, you can say, I'm looking for this kind of drive on this, to this destination on this day, and I'm this type of person. And if there's a match, you can say, well, I'll go with you. So this is a terrifying idea, if you ask me, to just go with someone, no matter you're using a service and people have to be verified. It still scares me to death to do this kind of stuff. But it's really popular, and I understand why. But there's some news, Stephen.
So when this first came into our lives, their artwork and in fact, if you look at your podcast player right now, the chapter art for this chapter is a couple of these characters. They little like claymation characters, and they sort of interact with each other. And they've moved away from that. So this article is basically 2 things: a new visual identity, which I actually think looks really nice.
Yes, it does.
They're optimizing their service for small cities. So like if you want to go to a small town, it could be hard to get there in public transit. They're trying to optimize that. But anyway, so it popped up again. TechCrunch is like on the BlaBlaCar beat. Like
they are. Romain, I think Romain from TechCrunch is always reporting on BlaBlaCar. I mean, it's a great idea. Just that I don't trust strangers. I don't know if that's. Is it just me that it sounds scary to just say yes? I will go with this person that I just met. It's basically like Craigslist but you share a few hours in the same car next to that person. I don't know. But also, I want to point out that there appears to be a trend in terms of branding and visual design that I've seen from a bunch of companies lately. And we, Stephen and Mike and I, we call this trend the tiny heads trend. So if you look at, I've seen this pop up in a bunch of places. The new artwork in Todoist. And, you know, the graphics you see when you complete something, for example, the new BlaBlaCar identity. And just today, I think there's a story on the new iOS 11 App Store about finance management apps. And there's the same cartoon characters with large bodies and tiny heads. And I don't know why, but this type of style, it really creeps me out. Like these people, they have really large bodies, like the monster. What's the name of the character from Big Hero 6?
I should know this.
Basically, that type of structure, but with a really tiny head. And it's, I don't know, it looks strange. So
there's some links in the show notes explaining this.
Tiny heads trend.
Oh boy, it's a trend of tiny heads. It is weird, but you know, branding. What can you do? All right,
Stephen, save us, please.
We have a bunch of topics this week, but first I want to tell you about our first sponsor, and that is Squarespace. Enter the offer code WORLD at checkout to get 10% off your first purchase. Make your next move with Squarespace. It lets you easily create a website for your next idea with a unique domain name, award-winning templates, and more. Maybe you want to create an online store or a portfolio to show off your work, or maybe you just want to be like Federico and be a blogger. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform that lets you do all of that stuff, and there's nothing to install, no patches to worry about, no upgrades needed. You still have to worry about that stuff because Squarespace, they've got you covered. They have award-winning 24/7 customer support if you do need any help. And they let you quickly and easily grab a unique domain name while you're there. Naming stuff is really hard, and you can do it all within Squarespace. And of course, you get access to all of those award-winning templates that are beautifully designed for you to show off your great ideas. At Relay, we have used Squarespace from day one to power our blog and our merchandise store. So if you've ever bought a t-shirt from us, you have experienced Squarespace's system for e-commerce, and it's super easy for us to set up. I can go and enter inventory, have coupons. It hooks up with our shipping system. It's really awesome. And the best part is Squarespace plans start at just $12 a month. But you, dear listener, can start a trial today with no credit card required by going to squarespace.com. And when you do decide to sign up, because I know that you will, because it's that good, use the offer code WORLD to get 10% off your first purchase and to show your support for Connected. We thank Squarespace for their support of this show and Relay FM. Squarespace, make your next move, make your next website.
So I just looked on Mike's mentions on Twitter, and people are wishing him happy 41st birthday.
It's good. It's important work we're doing. Very important work. So there's a story broke yesterday in Axios that Apple is doing some things this year with iOS. So the report claims that Craig Federighi has announced revised plans for iOS 12, that a number of features that were being worked on, assumedly, or were kind of spinning up maybe, are now being delayed until 2019. Those included a refreshed home screen and CarPlay interface, by the way, which is interesting. But instead of all that stuff, we're going to see improvements to core apps like Mail, updates to the camera app and Photos, with a focus on stability and bug fixes. So this is a big shift potentially in iOS. You know, iOS has been just pedal to the metal year after year after year for a decade now. And it looks like, if this is to be believed, and I think that we believe it, that Apple is going to take some time to sort of polish iOS 11, to fix the bugs that they have, to make improvements, and it not be a really big year for like user-facing features. So what do you think, Mr. iPad?
So first of all, I think this story is mostly accurate. I've had conversations with a bunch of friends at Apple this week, and the consensus is that this indeed happened, and the story is mostly true. The details, of course, can be wrong, and things can still change. Features sometimes they get pushed back all the time, or they get moved up. So the details can still change, but the underlying idea that there was this meeting and the executives decided this is a thing we gotta do. This seems to be the case, and I've seen on Twitter a few people say this is exactly what happened. Also in 2015 with iOS 9, that there was a focus on stability and performance improvements, but I don't remember there being a story about a meeting and about Craig Federighi saying this year we should focus on fixing the bugs and improving the performance of our devices. I don't remember that being an explicit decision. I remember iOS 9 was an iPad release. There were not, to my recollection, there were not a lot of iPhone features, but I don't remember Apple saying this year we're focusing on fixing the problems and consistency and speed. So if this is, there's also a tweet from a friend of the show, Steve Troughton-Smith, that I think is a good point of, is this like something that Apple does all the time and we just hear about it now, that features they get delayed, and there's also the talk of fixing bugs and having a more a better performing operating system. But is this really different from previous years, or is this more like, no, we were actually going to ship this redesigned home screen this year, we were going to do a bunch of new things for CarPlay, but we need to delay these major features to next year, as opposed to what we were thinking until a month ago. So is this I guess the question is, how much is this unusual for Apple to do at this stage, in late January? So that's a good question. I think, and this is why I had my prediction a couple of weeks ago on Connected, that Apple was going to have a focus on speed and fixing bugs this year. The combination, the really bad December that Apple had, the combination of the battery stuff that was popping up everywhere, and all the lawsuits, and the news that the iOS 11 adoption rate was the lowest in years, based on Apple's own statistics. I think all these elements combined to the executive team saying maybe we do need to slow down and focus on this other aspect of the user experience, which is equally important. Otherwise, people will not update their devices anymore, which is going to be a problem. I think it makes sense. I'm in favor of it. And this goes against, or maybe I guess, my own interest, but it's also something that I like, because having fewer features, personally speaking, means my review is going to be shorter. Because there's only so much you can say about, yes, there are fewer bugs now. I mean, how do you can compare speeds, you can compare design fixes, but fewer features means fewer chapters in my review. But also as a user, I think I welcome this, because iOS 11 has been buggy in many places for a lot of people. A lot of people have had more issues than I've seen on my devices, but I think especially on older devices, older iPads and iPhones, iOS 11 has been problematic. And so I think it's better for everyone if, once every couple of years, every 3 years maybe, I don't know, but every once in a while Apple slows down and says, we're gonna do 3-4 major new features instead of 10, and we're gonna focus on making sure that the foundation is solid, so over the next couple of years we can continue building on top of it. Otherwise, if you just continue building and shipping new features and new design, you have two problems. One is performance, and we've seen all these bugs, and the second is inconsistency. Apple has been building on top of the iOS 7 design language for years without saying, look, we need to slow down and we need to make up our minds. What is the aesthetic that we want to go for? for on iOS. And if you look at iOS 11, even the tiniest details, such as there's probably 3 different strokes for toolbar icons used in a bunch of places of the OS. So I think it's good news. I think it's good for everyone. It's good for Apple. It's good for us. And it's good for developers, because maybe for once in God knows how many summers, they won't have to, to ship a bunch of features, like major features in their apps. They can focus on maybe the business aspect or improving the performance and just cleaning up code. That's also good. So yeah. I'm in favor. I'm in favor of this.
Yeah, I think the reason this is news, and you alluded to it a second ago, that it's the end of January, and assuming this happened even in the last couple of weeks, they are already in the at least the beginning part of the cycle for iOS 12, right? And so it, did something internally flip over and they decided to make this and push things back. Whatever happened there internally, I think is probably good for all the reasons you stated. That there's stuff in iOS that needs attention. The design has sort of gotten scattered over the last year or 2 years. And I think that iOS is their most important operating system, and there's some stuff in there that needs to kind of be refactored or reconsidered for the modern era, and especially looking at moving forward, right? If they can spend some time and shore up the foundations, then they're better off down the road, right? That if something is buggy or broken now, then in 2 years or in 3 years, that's a bigger problem. So I'm with you. I think it's a good move. I think it's encouraging to see Apple be willing to put its most important OS, to slow it down for a year and to not get into a war of features with Android and to say, hey, look, we needed to kind of take care of our own house first. And so yeah, I'm in favor. I'm excited by this.
I'm curious to see if this is true, how they market, how they sell the idea of coming to WWDC. I assume that there's it's not like there will be 0 features. Like the iOS 12 SDK is just a bunch of fixes. I don't see that happening. There have to be at least a couple of features that you can say, iOS developers, this year you can work on this. And there's also a point that I wanted to make, that there's not necessarily there have to be new features in the iOS SDK for developers to work on their iOS apps in the summer. For example, there could be major iTunes Connect changes that require developers to consider the other aspect of how they release apps, how they manage beta testing, or even the business model. So there's still stuff that Apple could announce, even if they have, say, 3 major features on iOS. But the report from Bloomberg and the followed up on Axios is that Apple is pushing forward on the Marzipan project of having this shared framework to bring more easily iOS apps to the Mac. So I guess that maybe that will be the huge announcement at WWDC, and I could see how it sort of will shift the tone of the event from iOS developers scrambling to say, we gotta get this device screen size and these major features like drag and drop and new UI to work by September, versus iOS developers saying, hey, maybe now I should consider making a Mac app. So that should be a different type of event, if this is indeed the case.
Yeah, and you could see a world where this project to unify at some level Mac and iOS development, I can see this as being a very different WWDC than we've had in a really long time. I think, thinking back over the last decade of conferences from Apple, most of them are, kind of follow this pattern of there's a new Mac or a new iOS release or recently both. And sometimes there's hardware, but most of the time there's not. There's a pattern to these things. And if this year is about stability on iOS, and I would hope the Mac as well, then you have lots of room to tell this other story. And maybe it's this secret project, or maybe it's something else. But I mean, really, like the most recent like weird WWDC I can really think of is something like the Intel transition, which was now 13 years ago, right? It's like we actually don't have much in terms of software because it's actually all about this strategy, right? They didn't even release any new Intel Macs at that point. Those weren't due for another 6 months, but this is a time for us to talk about the future, and maybe that's what we get this year in San Jose. It would be exciting, and I think above all, if there's any kernel to truth in this, I'm glad that Apple is seeing what we see and they're responding appropriately. That, you know, we do need to take care of these lingering issues. We need to modernize some of our things. We do need to take care of the UI inconsistencies. And so, sign me up for this future. I'm down.
Yeah, and I mostly want to see this happen because I want to see what the reaction from people who have been saying Apple should have a Snow Leopard year, Snow Leopard release. I want to see what those people will say after this, because part of me thinks that those people will never be happy anyway, and that this Snow Leopard comment is just something to say because they tend to be negative all the time. And there's you can take a look at around, and you will see this. People have lots of opinions, as always. But I want to see if this strategy can basically make the critics happy or not. And I tend to fall somewhere in the middle. I think there should be a balance of new features and fixes every year. I think this is what we're seeing in this case is an exaggeration because it seems to me like Apple prefers to do either a bunch of new features or just to stop completely. And I think this kind of extremist strategy of it's either all new or nothing new, I don't think this serves anybody well. I think there should be a better, more balanced mix of, instead of doing 10 features and no focus on fixing stuff at all, maybe do 6 features every year, but also do the fixing and the polishing and the performance improvements alongside that as well. So I think this should be a lesson for Apple going forward. Now they need to stop because they have legacy code and craft from since before the days of iOS 7, I would assume, in certain places of the OS. But going forward, this should be an opportunity for Apple to say, maybe we don't need to do 12 major features plus hundreds of other smaller features and changes every year. Maybe we can do half, but we can also keep people happy. Because as it turns out, we're now entered this kind of stage where we all have smartphones and many of us have tablets, and we're used to these devices, and having this long list of changes at the expense of performance and stability every year, people don't like that. People want their phones, it's not like 2010 when everything was new and so it was super cool to have a new feature, dozens of new features every year. We want our phones to work, and we want our tablets to work. So I hope that going forward, I want to see what happens this year, but next year even, I want to see Apple say, okay, maybe we need to do a little bit of both at the same time, not either one or the other.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. It does seem, I hadn't really thought about that, but as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense that Apple is like cold or hot on these things. And we have gotten, so not to derail this into Mac land, but this is sort of what we were promised with the Mac last year. And Apple wasn't as clear as this report seems to be, that it's about stability and fixes, although Craig Federighi said that to the nerd audience at the talk show, and language wasn't as clear in the keynote. But High Sierra, people thought it was going to be a Snow Leopard release, but then they did a new file system, and then they did whatever they did to the authentication system that ended up being badly broken. So even High Sierra is not like a purely bug fix release, and neither was Snow Leopard. Snow Leopard added Exchange support, which was a huge improvement to mail, contacts, and calendars. So even Apple's Mac bug fix releases always have one or two features. Snow Leopard also had Grand Central Dispatch, which like totally changed and added to the architecture of computing on Mac OS, like big changes under the hood. And so I think there's there's precedent for that of Apple saying, hey, you know what, we're doing bug fixes and cleaning up. We're going to clean up the UI. And, Mail and Safari got a lot of attention and got a lot of new stuff. So I think that, I don't know how Apple sells just bug fixes and reliability to like the public, but I think if it's one or two, big features and then the rest of us are excited about the sort of cleanup stuff, then that's enough for a major OS release. Like I don't think this is going to be iOS 11.5. Like that would really, really surprise me. Like it's going to be 12.
I thought about that.
It'd be crazy.
I thought about that though. Yeah, it would. I'll tell you what a possible strategy could be. A simple message. iOS 12 makes your phone last 2 hours longer. That would do it. That would do it. And, you do that and you do 100 new emoji and you're basically set. You got, everybody wants a phone that lasts longer and has new emoji and maybe new emoji. I think to get those numbers back up, you need to get practical here. You need to understand that the very necessity that most people have with their phone, and that is, I want my phone to last longer. And I honestly believe that if they focus on performance and they ship features to control even more features to control background processes, for example, and to control which apps are using your, a lot of your energy. And combine that with the throttling and the battery information coming in 11.3, Apple has a real chance to make people happy by addressing the most common complaint, and that is it's 11 p.m. and my phone died, and because that's annoying, and that everybody can relate to that.
Yeah. People in my household would be happy. I know that.
So yeah, we'll see. I'm curious to see the WWDC press release. Like, what is it that they say in the press release? Come to see the future of iOS. I guess they will still say that because they have to. But it should be interesting. It's February almost, and I would assume that now it's gonna be the hot rumor season. We're gonna get the reports of features coming or not to iOS, so I'm looking forward to that.
Should be an adventure. Maybe the invite is just like Craig Federico with a Band-Aid, like placing it over an iPad.
The invite graphics is a photo of Craig Federico holding a sign that says sorry.
A cardboard sign, like standing in an intersection. Sorry. All right, we have more stuff to talk about, but let me tell you about our second sponsor. This episode of Connected is brought to you by Anchor. Anchor is absolutely the fastest and easiest way for anyone to make a podcast. If you just have a thing that you want to say, a moment you want to share, you can. You don't need a mobile recording rig. Just download Anchor from the App Store and you record onto it like you're talking on the phone. Then Anchor takes care of the rest. As well as allowing you to create a quick podcast of your own, Anchor is also a really cool social network built around audio. You can follow people, call into their stations, leave them questions, and listen to some of your favorite people share their thoughts with you. This app is super well polished. For something that has people you subscribe to, ways to record audio, way to share it. They've really done a good job of making it easy to use. It's bright and colorful. There are emoji everywhere. It's really a great app for 2018. If you want to find out more about Anchor, there's a great way to do that. Mike, our co-host, has been using Anchor. You can go to his page, anchor.fm/Mike Hurley. You can find out more there and you can follow him there. He is doing a persistent audio AMA with listeners of this show, so you can call in and ask questions. He's answering a few every day. So you sign up, you call into his station to leave a message, and then he plays back the best one. So you hear the listener question and then his answer together. It's really, really cool. Once again, go to anchor.fm/Mike Hurley to check it out and leave him a question. Our thanks to Anchor for their support of this show and Relay FM. So in the same time frame we're talking about iOS 12, the iPhone SE and the iPhone SE2, the rumored upgrade to the iPhone SE, is making the rounds. And I think most of us believed that if there is another iPhone SE, and I think there should be, it looks the same. they just replace the guts in it, which are basically an iPhone 6S, give or take, and puts like the iPhone 7 or hopefully even the iPhone 8's internals in the case, and just upgrade the specs and keep selling it as it is. I think that's how a lot of people have thought about this, but there's a KGI Securities report out casting doubts on the SE2 and basically saying that if it does come, it's not going to bring anything like wireless charging. It's not going to bring radically new design. And I just don't know what the point of this report is, because I don't. Were people thinking? So I wrote my iPhone 10 review this week finally, and someone was like, "Well, why didn't you mention like an iPhone SE sized iPhone 10?" I was like, "Because I don't think there's going to be one." Like, so why? Like, I don't understand the point of the report. It seems pretty cut and dry to me that if the iPhone SE2 is a thing, they're just going to put new hardware in the case and keep selling it.
I thought the entire point of the SE was to, one, keep the small form factor that a lot of people still like around and giving people the better internals, and also to reuse some components that Apple has. The supply chain already knows how to produce en masse, and they know how to make into a product. I don't understand why there should be the expectation that the SE as wireless charging and therefore a glass back instead of the aluminum design of the iPhone 5 family. Yeah. I just don't understand. Does the SE have the iPhone 5 or iPhone 4S size?
It's the 5S. So like it
5S,
looks more or less like a 5S. The edges are a little bit different, but yeah, it's that size. So it has Touch ID, and it's that 4-inch form factor.
Yeah, I could see maybe dropping the home button and the Touch ID, but even then it would be strange to have the iPhone 10 look because I don't think the body, the aluminum structure is changing. I struggle to imagine why would Apple want to make an iPhone 5 sized iPhone 10 or even an iPhone 8. Basically an iPhone 8 into the because there has never been. If we're talking about wireless charging, so let's go step by step. If KGI mentions wireless charging, that means at least the iPhone 8 design, because those are the phones that support wireless charging. There are not the iPhone 10, but there has never been an iPhone 6 sized device that has wireless charging. So Apple would have to make a new iPhone 8 type of device into a smaller body. Yeah. And that to me does not mean reusing components and making a phone that is smaller for people who don't want to get the latest one. Because basically you're arguing in favor of saying, I want an iPhone 6, but that supports wireless charging. And that thing never existed. So what is it exactly that you're saving here? I don't understand this report.
This may be a case. I mean, we could be wrong, right? It could be come and go, and it has wireless charging and a 4-inch screen and a new body. But I just don't see Apple making that investment. I think the SE is like super cheap, and I think a large part of that is because it's so cheap to build them at this point that they're just cranking them out. And so I don't know. I hope there's an SE. My wife has an iPhone SE. She really loves it, but it's 2 years old, and it's got 6S internals, and I haven't run any benchmarks or like the battery thing on it because I don't I assume that it's had battery wear and tear over those 2 years. And she likes the size. She doesn't want to go up to the size of the iPhone 8. And so hopefully there's something to replace that phone with for her at some point. Mm-hmm. But I would not be surprised if it looks the same. And I don't think that's a letdown. Like, I think people who buy the iPhone SE buy it for two reasons. One of two reasons. One, because it's cheap, and if you only have a relatively little bit amount of money to spend on a phone, it's at the bottom end of things. And two, I think the bigger reason is that people really like the size. There are a lot of people, my wife is chief among them, that anything over 4 inches is too big for her. She doesn't care for it. I bought her an iPhone 6S, and I sold it to a family member when the SE came out. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
She had a 6S for like 2 months, and then the SE came out, and I had to swap it around for her. And so she doesn't want to move up in size. I think there are a lot of people like that, and it's not a very big market, but I think it's a market that is worth Apple continuing to serve, especially if it is relatively straightforward to do so. And taking the SE and giving it a glass back for wireless charging, or making it with the Face ID, like all those things are not keeping it simple, and it would drive the cost up, and it would de-incentivize Apple to do it in the first place. So I think an iPhone SE2 is just the iPhone SE we know today, just faster, and that will appease those customers 100%.
Yeah, I could see, iPhone 7 specs into that kind of device. Not even iPhone 8 specs. I don't remember when the SE launched, which kind of internals it had.
It has the 6S internals, and it came out like 4 months after the 6S. So for most of a year, it was up to date, and then the iPhone 7 passed it.
Okay, so it could be iPhone 8 specs in the smaller package. That would be nice. Yeah, that would be amazing. Actually, I have a dear friend who swears by the SE. He doesn't want to upgrade to even the iPhone 7, the iPhone 8, the small one. He just wants to keep the phone as small as possible. Which I understand, because a lot of people do not like, where we've gone as an industry towards bigger phones. They want to use small ones, and I think the SE is important enough to keep those people happy. Because if there are enough people, why drive them away to another ecosystem? If you can make this cheaper phone that as arguably a classic industrial design, you cannot say that the iPhone 5S look is ugly or dated. It looks beautifully retro the way that I see it. It's a classic Apple design. So why not keep it around? And if you have the components for the current line of phones, why not reuse them? I also think it's valuable for Apple to produce these phones, because it teaches them how to make these components into an even smaller package, such as taking the current year's CPU, for example, and making it fit into such a smaller body. That should be valuable from an engineering perspective. So I would be happy to see a new SE model this year.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that from like the engineering perspective, it being beneficial. But I think you're right there. I think there's definitely something there, and I think the look is fine. Like you said, it's classic. My wife's got the space gray SE, and she usually carries it in a case, but I had it out of the case a couple of weeks ago, and I was just holding it. I was like, man, this looks really good still. And it's not so much with the iPhone 10, but for a while with the Plus, sometimes I thought, would it be crazy to like pick up a 5S or an SE just to have a phone that is smaller for like bike riding and going to the gym? And the Apple Watch has taken care of that for me, because like going to the gym with a plus size phone in your pocket is just a giant pain. But there are people who, want a phone as small and compact as possible. And you said something about, going to other ecosystems. There aren't many no Android flagship phone is as small as the SE. You kind of have to do like mid-range or even cheap phones on the Android side to get something this small. So, I mean, Apple really, I think, has the only premium small size smartphone at this point, that matters. And I think that's valuable to have. And I think that, when they introduced it, they talked a lot about how people buying their first iPhone, at the time, they were buying 5Ss because they were cheap and small, and the SE could meet their needs, but with modern technology inside of it. Because if someone is buying their first phone and they're going to buy the small, cheap one, if they buy something that's 3 years old, the iOS experience is not what it is on a new phone, right? It's going to be slower. You're going to have features that aren't there. And some of that's true on the SE because it doesn't have 3D touch, but it is as close as you can get to having the full iOS experience for the cost. And again, I think that's valuable because someone coming into the ecosystem if their first device is small and cheap, but it's a cruddy experience, that's not a great introduction to this world, right? And I think the SE keeps a lot of people coming into the ecosystem happy for many years. And again, I think that's a valuable customer to have. They're not paying what I paid for my iPhone 10, so they're not like as monetarily valuable to Apple. But if their first iPhone experience is good, I bet they're going to get a second iPhone. And if it's a way to introduce people to the iPhone for the first time, that's cheap and relatively modern and fast and beautiful and robust. That aluminum body is way tougher than the glass front and back iPhone 8 Plus, and 10. Then like those are all good things. There are all reasons to keep the SE around and to improve it. And I really hope we see it this spring. March will be 2 years. It's time. So I'm hoping that even if there's not a March event, Apple just has a press release of, hey, the SE has updated internals. Go crazy. I know that we'd be ordering one for my wife the day it happens.
Did they have an event for the original SE?
It was there. There was an event. It was during the 9.7 inch.
Oh right, yeah.
iPad Pro event, maybe. I don't know. No, that's not right. There was something else. There was something else in that keynote. But they. Oh look, I'm looking on YouTube. Let's see what else. Let's see what else was during this event. I don't know. They had other stuff, but it was part of a March event. So
yeah, it was March 2021, 2016.
March 2016.
So that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was the 9.7 inch iPad Pro.
Yeah. I'm looking at photos. There were. I didn't remember. There were 4 color options for the SE. Nice. Yeah, it's a really, if you take, I'm taking a look at the pictures again, because I don't see this design often, right? It's a classic design. It still looks great. It's not the phone for me, but I think it looks fantastic. And there's no camera bump, which
true.
is nice. It's flat. It's a flat back, as it should be on a phone. And it can even capture 4K video. So, I forget that the SE is a modern phone. It's got Apple Pay. It's got 4K video. It's got no camera bump. It looks really nice. It's the past of iPhone designs, but that does not necessarily mean that it's bad. So I agree. We should get a new SE. I don't want it, but it's important for people to have. So fingers crossed. Even though I don't know, there's going to be a March event in 2018. I have no idea, but. Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe it'll be the iPhone SE and a Mac Mini. Just all the small things get updated. iPod Touch.
It'll be the grab bag event with SE2, Mac Mini, and AirPower.
That thing. Oh, I've already forgotten about it.
Well, don't call it that thing. It's awesome. I'm looking forward to AirPower.
I am too. The other day, actually, I think I tweeted this. I got to the gym and I flipped open my AirPods case and the LED didn't come on. I was like, oh no. So I pulled the earbuds out and the left one wouldn't pair and the right one said it had 2% battery left. I was like, oh no. I didn't have any wired headphones with me. And I stayed at the gym. I didn't go home, even though the thought did cross my mind. But I definitely just put them in so it looked like I was listening to stuff. So, people don't try to talk to you. I don't know what that says about me as a person. Maybe nothing good, but
actually a lot of people do that. Remember when we were at Facebook 2 years ago and there was the vending machine with headphones that you could get? You could have used one of those at the gym.
I know. Oh man, like $100 for AirPods. Okay,
sure. Sign me up.
Here's my credit card. All the iPhone SE stuff comes in context that KGI and others are reporting that 2018's iPhones are going to be bonkers. So a second-gen iPhone 10 with upgraded internals, a 6.5-inch iPhone 10 Plus, and then a cheaper LCD but still has Face ID 6.1-inch screen, and assumedly no 4.7 or old Plus. Like, I don't want to really get into this because this is all crazy and it's really early. But I just don't see Apple giving up the 4.7-inch size. I feel like something in all this iPhone reporting is not landed quite yet. There's still something out here that isn't quite fully formed in these reports.
So I had a thought about this, and this is just my theory, but it's the only way that in my brain I can reconcile these rumors. My idea and my question/theory is if maybe the strategy of offering both the old design iPhone 8 and the futuristic iPhone 10, if maybe that did not work out as Apple expected, or if maybe it's just time to move on. I wonder if this could be a way to say within the same line, so the same design, we now offer 3 options. There's iPhone 10, which would be the quote basic one with the LCD. There's iPhone 10 Pro, which would be the one we have today with the OLED display and the bigger display also, and an iPhone 10 Plus, which would be, the really top of the line model.
Yeah. $1,300.
and I do wonder if maybe this is Apple's way of saying we don't want to cause any more confusion, asking people to pick between the also new iPhone 8, which is a bigger number than last year, so it must be new, but the also newer new iPhone 10. And it's a way of saying everything is new, but now you just choose whichever version you prefer. I do also wonder if confusion could be just relocated somewhere else, which would be, how do you explain people the differences between what looks like an iPhone 10 but as an LCD and what looks like an iPhone 10 also but is OLED? So it seems to me like just the display type wouldn't be enough to explain people how to tell the difference.
No way, man. Like, people don't know the difference.
Exactly. So, but I have asked myself this question: is this a way to simplify the decision for people? Instead of having to say, do I want the old design but it's the iPhone 8 so it's still new, or do I want the iPhone 10 which is super new but it's also super expensive?
Yeah, I don't know. It's all very confusing.
I still think that the iPhone Pro name is a great name and it should happen.
It is a good name.
Mm-hmm. But we all know, we're gonna go back to the 10 Plus, it sounds amazing. So I was holding a friend of mine, she has an iPhone 7 Plus. And she wants to wait until the 10 gets the Plus version because she's so used to having the big phone. Mm-hmm. And I was holding her phone a few days ago and it still looks great. I'm used to the iPhone 10. I love the iPhone 10. I think having the edge-to-edge design compensates for the smaller size. Yeah. But I cannot wait until I get the Plus physical size, but it's an entire display. Because I know I can use that phone. I used that phone for a couple of years. And I'm going to have an even bigger Plus that has this edge-to-edge display. That it's not physically bigger, but the experience gives me more room for apps and everything. So I'm really looking forward to this phone.
That's really funny to me. I, too, very recently held a 7 Plus, a friend of mine has, and I sort of had the opposite reaction to you, and I really liked the Plus. But the 10, because it's more or less hand-wavy, the Plus screen and the regular phone body, roughly, I was like, I don't know if I don't want to see it, but I don't know if I could go back. Like, it felt enormous. I think part of it is just trickery that it has the chin and the forehead, so it looks bigger than it is.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So I'm very curious about an iPhone 10 Plus. I would definitely want to check one out. But I don't know right now if they were both on sale what I would do, because I'm really happy with the 10 because I've gotten used to the more compact size, but you still, like you said, get most of the benefits of the Plus screen. Now, the one thing that I still think is inferior is the keyboard. I think the keyboard really benefits from the width of the Plus.
That is so true. Yeah.
Who knows? I guess we'll find out in September.
we should note that all these rumors and this speculation is leading up to Apple's results, which are due tomorrow for Q1 2018. I guess.
Sure. Yes.
Which would be the holiday quarter, the really big numbers. And we've seen all these reports of, and I should tell you, this notion that Apple is discontinuing, is canceling the iPhone 10 is everywhere. I've had my girlfriend ask me if the iPhone 10 is being cancelled. I've had my mom ask me what is going on with the iPhone 10. I've had friends saying, "Oh, don't you know Apple is discontinuing the iPhone 10?" So the narrative that Apple isn't selling the new phone well is something that happens every year, but this year it's been everywhere in the news, and people like everybody I talk to about the iPhone, they know that Apple is canceling the iPhone 10, which is crazy. But I do wonder if we're gonna get any. We have to get any kind of detail from Apple tomorrow during the earnings call that they need to reply to these reports that the iPhone 10 is being canceled because it didn't sell as well as Apple was hoping.
My guess is, so we'll see the average selling price, and I think that'll be up a little bit from where it's been, showing that 10s are in the mix. But I would not be surprised if Apple doesn't take that report on like head on and says, no, we're not canceling. Demand is still strong. We are still making this phone, because it is so. And most of the time these stories come out and they sort of die off because people understand that sometimes they come from people who are trying to do things with the stock, or I don't know if that's the case this time, but there's all these factors, right? When you talk about the financial side of it, that I don't think either of us are fully capable of discussing intelligently, but it's very complicated. But this time, like you said, it is everywhere, man. It is everywhere. And it feels like Apple, because it's their flagship, I think I would not be surprised, I should say, if Tim Cook doesn't address that just directly in like very plain language. And they have done that sort of thing in the past, addressing certain things. No, I mean, it's silly to think, maybe it hasn't met their expectations, or maybe the ASP hasn't moved, and we'll see that tomorrow, to a degree, and we'll have to wait for, Simco and other folks to really break it down. But my guess is that the iPhone 10 is selling fine. I see them out in the world. I also see a ton of 8s and 8 Pluses, because I think the 8 was different enough that people who skipped the 7 are finally upgrading. Like, I know a lot of people who went from the 6 or the 6S to the 8, and I think their numbers are going to be huge tomorrow. But I don't think Apple's going to let that rumor continue to float out there. I think they'll say something directly.
Yeah, I hope so. I wanna see what the narrative, how they all these analysts, how they react to a direct confirmation from Apple. So that should be interesting. And the results are due tomorrow, so February 1st at, we talked about this a few minutes ago, Stephen, what's the time again? Is that 11 p.m. in Italy, which should be the 5 p.m. Eastern in the United States. But as usual, the results, they come out 30 minutes before Apple does their earnings call when the market closes. You get a press release from Apple, and you get a bunch of charts from websites like Mac Stories, 512, 6 Colors, all the great websites. We have charts, so we have numbers, so we have different colors for numbers. So that should be fun.
Should be a real scene. So we got one more topic. And it's a busy week. I mean, for the end of January, like, we're not even talking about the government probing Apple about the battery thing.
Yeah.
There's still a bunch of stuff that we've had in our show notes that we keep pushing back. It's been a very busy January. Usually January's pretty slow when it comes to covering Apple, but they're keeping us busy. But we have one last sort of unusual topic. But first, let me tell you about our final sponsor this week. This episode of Connected is brought to you by PDF Pen from our friends at Smile. PDF Pen equips you with everything you need for more powerful PDF editing. It's the ultimate tool for editing PDFs and going paperless with your work. It's time you get your documents in order, and Smile is here to help. With PDF Pen, you can split and combine PDF documents to send just the right things to the people who need them. You can fill in PDF forms, whether they're interactive or not. You can even add things like page numbers, redact account numbers, and even perform OCR on scanned documents. So you can scan a bunch of paperwork I'm doing this right now with taxes. I'm scanning a bunch of stuff, and then I can OCR it in PDF Pen so I can search it. It's really, really powerful. And if you're looking for something in particular, you can find and highlight all instances of a specific term in a document. Sometimes PDFs just need a small fix, like correcting a typo, and you can use PDF Pen to sort that out as well. The feature is so handy, it can save you from having to create an entirely new PDF. You just go in there and correct a typo. And the new PDF Pen 3 is tailor-made for iOS 11. So you can get all these great benefits of PDF Pen right on your iPhone or iPad. You also have the option to step up to PDF Pen Pro to create PDF portfolios. You can create collections of multiple PDFs and related files. And this is great for presenting year-end documents or taxes or that sort of stuff. Like I said, I've been in the midst of paperwork as a business owner, and PDF Pen has really come through for me, as it always does. If you're thinking about trying PDF Pen, now is a time to do it. They've just added over 100 enhancements with the release of PDF Pen 9. So get organized this year. Go to smilesoftware.com/podcast now to see what PDF Pen could do for you. That's smilesoftware.com/podcast. Thank you so much to PDF Pen from Smile for their support of this show and Relay FM. So Federico, we're preparing for the show this week, and you text me and saying, I've been using DuckDuckGo this year, or for, I don't know how long you said. I've been using DuckDuckGo.
Yeah.
And I know people who use it. I think most of the people who use it, if I can paint with a broad stroke, do it because they don't want to use Google for political or religious reasons. But you use Google stuff often, I know.
Yes.
But you're using DuckDuckGo on iOS for some very specific reasons that I found really interesting. So what has gone into this decision for you?
So I should note up front that I haven't switched search engines because of privacy concerns, or because I think Google is creepy, or because I feel like I'm being spied. I understand that some people have these concerns, which are valid, but this is not my primary reason. I have been increasingly annoyed by how Google mobile search works and looks like in Safari for iOS. I've had very specific complaints and problems that I will go through right now. The first one, and really the most annoying one, which I cannot stand any longer, is that every single time I search for something on Google with my iPhone, I get a location prompt. I get a pop-up dialog that says, Google wants to use your location for results, whatever. I have tried to follow a bunch of tutorials over the past couple of years. Each one of these guides offered a solution to get rid of these prompts. None of them worked. So, yes, you can try to send me a link to a tutorial that promises to fix this problem. It will not work. I have tried them all. So every time I open a Google search, I get this prompt that I assume it's because I try to use google.com, but also the iPhone sees that I'm in Italy. And basically, I need to accept this prompt, then it reloads the page underneath. So the results change before my eyes. And this is super annoying because I've been seeing this prompt like 12 times a day.
Yeah,
and
I see it too.
Such a waste. It's so annoying. The other issue that I have is that there's a general weirdness due to AMP pages. So the Google AMP, the mobile format that they're doing, it used to be that I could not copy the standard URLs of web pages. Google was doing the google.com/amp/something. But now that the links have been cleaned up, I still get weird issues with, for example, scrolling in these AMP pages, because Google, if whatever possible, they try to default to loading the AMP version of a web page that you open from Google search. Or for example, I often cannot swipe back from a Google AMP page. If I try to swipe back from the left edge of the iPhone's display, the gesture is like stuck, because I think the Google AMP, it does some weird stuff to hijack the standard scrolling behavior of Safari, and so sometimes not even swiping back works. Or if it does, if swiping back works, I go back to the main Google search page, but I cannot swipe vertically anymore. So I cannot scroll results for like 2 seconds.
And we should say it's a happy anniversary. It's been a year since you were in the New York Times.
Oh, really?
Yelling about Google AMP. Well, there'll be a link in the show notes.
Nice. What else? Of course. I get redirected from the Google.com version, which is the one that I want to use because for work, I need to look up English stuff all the time. I get redirected to the Google Italian version, which would be .it for Italy. I don't want to use that. I do not want to, because whenever I type something in English, but it goes to Google.it, it then says, do you mean to search for this? Because it does not understand English because it's the Italian version. So I do not want to get redirected to the Italian version of Google search. And finally, something that I've been noticing over the past few months is sometimes when you tap on a Google search result, you open the result, and then if you go back, the result gets overlaid with related suggestions. So like tiny rectangles containing related search queries for the result you just tapped on. But if, for example, you go back and let's say you search for, dog cow tattoo on Google, and you open a result and you say, oh, this is pretty cool. You go back and you're back on the list of results. And then you say, oh man, I should have copied the link to the webpage. And you assume I should be able to tap and hold on the title of the search result and I can copy the link. But no, these suggestions, they overlay the result. And you cannot see the result anymore unless you reload the entire webpage, which is just... this is too much, man. Like all these changes and all this AMP stuff and the location prompts, this is just so annoying. It used to be so simple, and I don't mean to sound like a grumpy old guy. I'm all for change and new features, but it's like you were supposed to give me a car, and now you're giving me this space shuttle with all these controls and all these options. I just want a list of results. This was your entire premise, Google, that I type something into the box and the box spits out a bunch of results. And for me at least, that is not the case anymore, because whenever I type in something, I am waiting that second, wishing that either I don't get a location prompt, or I don't get a bunch of AMP pages, or that I can scroll like a normal web page, and this is just too much. So like a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I know, but most people do this for political reasons. I'm just gonna try DuckDuckGo because of the design and functionality. Like I want what Google used to be 3-4 years ago, before they started doing all of this, and it looks nice. It's a list of search results with no AMP, no location prompt, and yes, privacy is a plus. For me, it's not. For me personally, it's not the main reason why I want to use this. It's just the main functionality of a search engine. I type something, I get a list of results. Sometimes I get those special fancy inline answers, like you can do calculations, you can do currency conversions, you can look up definition of words, which look awesome on DuckDuckGo. It's a really beautiful design. You can get nerdy with DuckDuckGo. You can go into the settings. You can change a bunch of preferences. You can switch themes, which is nice, I guess. But honestly, it looks nicer. Still, and if you have any questions, Stephen, feel free to ask me. I'm not a DDG expert, but I've been playing around with it. I fear that I will still have to use Google for two things that I do all the time. It's not that I fear. I'm begrudgingly using Google for two things. One of them is I use Google News results a lot, and DuckDuckGo as a news tab in the search results, but it's not as I don't want to say real time, but as effective as Google's. On Google, I see a lot of news items. On DuckDuckGo, I often don't even see the news option. at all. And the other one is the ability to filter results by time. This is something that I do a lot on Google. If I'm looking for something recent, I filter by the last 24 hours or the last month. This is something that you can do if you tap on search tools on Google search. And I think DuckDuckGo has the same option, but again, there are not as many results as there are on Google. The good news is DuckDuckGo has this feature called bangs, which are basically a syntax that allow you to redirect a search from DuckDuckGo to something else. And this works both in the DuckDuckGo webpage, so if you actually type into the search field, or if you set DDG as your default search engine in Safari, the bang syntax also works in the Safari address bar. So, for example, if I know I need to look something up on Google, instead of opening DuckDuckGo and then be like, oh man, I didn't find what I was looking for, if I have a feeling that, like, maybe I'm gonna find this page on Google, I do right away in Safari !G, which is the bang syntax for Google, and then I type in whatever it is that I'm looking for, and automatically DuckDuckGo goes to encrypted.google.com, which is the encrypted version of Google search. I don't know what encrypted means. It should be encrypted by default. I guess there's a higher privacy level or something, and it's a way to bypass DuckDuckGo and go straight to Google. And there's the bang syntax, which I'm not super familiar with, but I know you can do this kind of stuff for YouTube, for Amazon, it's a way to save time, with the custom syntax. So basically, I'm happy so far. It looks cleaner. And I don't understand why Google is making it so hard for people to use Google search on their iPhones. It used to be so simple. And it used to be so effective. Like, you type something, you get something back. But now they're hungry for all this data and location and AMP and all this custom stuff. And I'm just like, Google, I'm fine with your data collection policy. I'm fine with your type of company, because usually I get a great service out of Gmail and the G Suite and all these other stuff, but this is too much. This is basically unusable for me. So I'm just going to use something else.
Yeah, I haven't spent much time with DuckDuckGo, but I know it's powerful. I know that Safari, mobile Safari and Google are a super annoying combination. I get them too here in the US. I get that little pop-up. And as far as I can tell, nothing I've searched for and found on the internet can make it stop.
Yeah.
So there's that. But yeah, I think it's interesting. Keep us posted on this. I'm curious if this is something that sticks long term, or if you end up being frustrated by something and going back. So,
yeah, I've heard from people that said I try to use DuckDuckGo because I like them, the design, and I like the company. Yeah. But ultimately, I was constantly going back to Google, so I figured maybe I should just switch back and accept Google for what it is. So far, the things I'm looking for, support documents from Apple, or developer pages on developer.apple.com, or old articles on Mac Stories or Dating Fireball. I've been able to find those just fine. I want to see how it goes. Maybe when I'm working on an article and I need to do a lot of research, is that going to be a problem? So I'll keep you posted on how this goes. But right now, I'm making actions for drafts to launch search pages on DuckDuckGo. I'm making workflows. I'm having fun as usual. But we'll have to see. When I'm when I need to look up a lot of stuff, old articles, old reference material, is that going to work for me? I don't know. So we'll see.
I think that does it for this week. Feel good?
Yeah.
I feel good.
Yeah, I do. I feel refreshed, Stephen.
That's good. Mm-hmm. If you want to find show notes for this week, you can point your web browser to relay.fm/connected/178. The show notes probably also in the app you're using to listen to this, but they're on the web if you need them there. There's an email link there on the sidebar of the web page, and then, of course, you can find us all on Twitter. Mike is at IMYKE. Be sure to wish him a happy birthday and tell him your favorite color. You can find Federico there as Viticci, Viticci, and Federico, of course, writes macstories.net. You can find me at 512pixels.net and 512pixels on YouTube, and on Twitter, I'm ISMH. Thank you to our sponsors, Squarespace, Anchor, and Smile. And until next week, Federico, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Adios.